Aloha me kākou. Welcome to our session called Mana I Kaleo. We're here to discuss the wonderful yet scary yet awe-enticing art of oli. And before we get started, I'd just like to introduce myself and the distinguished members of this panel so that we know each other and we can kuka. For myself, my name is Laʻakapu Lenchanko, no hoʻaiʻai mai au. He haumana au, makikula nui o Hawaii ma Manua. He haumana hoʻopaʻa wau ma ka pāhula o Kalilehua, ma lalo o ke kumuhula o Snowbird Puanani o Pauakalani Bento. He haumana oli wau ma halau o Kawailani, ma lalo o koʻu makua kāne hanauna o ihoʻi o Anthony Laʻakapu Kawailani Lenchanko. So, I'm just here to be the guy who asked the questions. Yeah. Okay. I'm very, very honored to be sitting next to these three gentlemen sitting here before us. They are master chanters, kumuhula, and exponents of Hawaiian culture. They are the makua and the soon-to-be, no, not kupuna yet, but the makua, who hopefully someday will pass down their knowledge to the next generation. I'm going to start with the gentleman to my right. I'm sure he needs no introduction because his face is famous like that, you know. But okeia no o manu ai ko hana boy. All right. He is, okay, I get my notes over here, you see. Okay. He is the cultural director of the Royal Hawaiian Center, and he is a graduate of Halau Nakamali under Kumuhula Robert Uluwehi Kezamero. He is the Kumuhula of Halau o Kea'ali Iku Makani, and the lead vocalist of the ʻAha mele o Ho'okena. Aloha mai. Sitting next to him is another man who needs no introduction. He is Dr. Kalena Silva. He is the director of Kahakaʻula o Keʻelikolani, the College of Hawaiian Language at the University of Hawaii at Hilo. Aka no oʻahu mai oia. Ai. Okay. He is a graduate with the Papa Lehua of Halau Hula o Maiki. He is also one of the most well-known students of the great master chanter Ka'upena Wong. He is also the Luna Ho'oponopono of the Kohoʻoilina Journal. And Dr. Silva has his PhD in ethnomusicology from the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Oh, Washington. University of Washington. Oh, my God, you know. Oh, wait, no. See, fired already, this moderator. Okay. And the gentleman to my far right, who's probably the one that I have the hardest to introduce because I've known him all my life. He is Laʻakapu Kawailani Lenchanko. Anakala Laʻakapu, I hope you're okay with me calling you Anakala. Okay. Anakala Laʻakapu is a graduate of Kapahula, Hawaii, given the rank of Loea Hula from his kumuhula, John Kaha'iali Ika Iwi Ula o Kamehameha Tapalinski. He is a 4-time winner of the King Kamehameha Oli competition. He is a kumuhula of Halau Kawailani and a kumuoli of Naupua o Kealohilani. And he is the recipient of the Chanter's Art Award from Naleo Mele, the Chanter's Art Foundation, which was established by Ka'upena Wong. Aloha mai. Okay, so we're here to talk about Oli. Where do we begin? Well, let me start with an easy question, and whoever wants to take it can take it. I think it's pretty well understood that mele oli are chants or poems or songs that are different from mele hula in that they are not meant to be danced to. Although sometimes mele hula do become mele hula, mele oli do become mele hula, and sometimes mele hula do become mele oli. So my first question is, in your opinion, what is the purpose and function of oli?
Okay. Yeah, well, you know, the old days, I don't think that this is anything really new, but, you know, the old days, and we hear about this, we read about this in the Hawaiian language newspapers, and of course it's come down to us, you know, through knowledge that has been passed in halau hula, that, you know, the old days chanting occurred in so many different contexts of daily living, contexts that maybe don't exist today, or in ways that we don't use the mele today anymore. So in the old days, chanting was something that was very natural. And there were chants that were pre-composed, there were chants that were extemporaneous, spontaneously composed. And of course, we know that there were game chants, we know that there were chants to pray in any of the professions, as a fisherman, as a bird catcher, as a hula person, being associated with the courts. So you had, you know, all of these different kinds of professions and all of these different kinds of daily activities that easily made use of oli and mele in ways that I don't think we fully understand today. That's why I was so excited, you know. I know the vehena was only to be 2 hours. It ended up being 3 hours, but I think every minute was really well spent. Because, you know, these people who, the ha'iolelo stood up, and then we had chanting and we had hula, and all of that reinforces among all of us who witnessed this event. It reinforces the importance of this knowledge, and it reinforces the pieces of knowledge themselves, so that when we come back again, maybe next year, or in some other event where we can do this sort of thing, people will remember, yes, of course, you know, Maui Nui Akama, all these names, Ni'iha wo Kahelelani, and Mawainualani, another name for Kauai. I mean, all of these things came up today, and that's just really, really exciting, because in the old days, it happened all the time. So the people, being a part of one society, had these functions and activities in daily life that allowed them to use spontaneously composed and pre-composed mele to, and I think mele, you know, chanting is something that we do because this is not enough. Just speaking is not enough. I need to get to another level, whether it be spiritual, whether it be social, or whether it be political. I want to get to another level of understanding. And I think really Hawaiian mele composing was probably one of the highest intellectual activities of Hawaiians in the old days, because you really had to know your stuff. I mean, you had to know the community, of course. You had to know ancient kinds of and old kinds of knowledge, bring that into the present and make sense of all of it in our language. And so, to me, one of the highest intellectual activities of the Hawaiian was mele composing, which they did every day, I think, in, as you said, pre-composed and spontaneous ways. I'll just end it like that because I know that Manu and Tony they have some more things to add. Which of you first?
Go ahead, Manu. Okay, what was the question again?
Okay.
What is the purpose and function of oli?
Okay,
And aloha ho mai kākou, aloha nui. And thank mahalo Kalena. I feel like a fish out of water, sort of, because I don't consider myself a master really at all, but I need to also embrace and wear the kuleana that has been placed on me, and I need to remind myself of that. But both of these two, and this young Laʻakapu over here, making me nervous. I agree. I think the chanting, everybody chanted. Everybody chanted. Because everybody prayed. And if you prayed, you chanted. You chanted softly, you, generally speaking. I think those are the kinds of things, it's the subtleties of the voice that I'm interested in, and dispelling sometimes the myth that the louder the better. That's a'ole pela ka oia I o I ku wahi mana'o with a keoli ana. It's environmental also, and there are times when you want to break out of the environment, and there are times when you want to meld right into the environment. Ina he kia manu oi. And noho mekeaho nui, and you're waiting for the birds to come and all that. You're not going to scream out a chant announcing that you're coming or that sort of thing. And yet you want to kind of like a paia, you want to kind of lure things to you. And I think that when you think of from Western or even other terms about the sonic power and the tones that create energy and that sort of thing, I think our kupuna were probably masters at that. In lore, in our ka'au and mo'olelo, we think of the voices, and one that always stands out, and I've always been, and I can bring her up at ʻaha kane, because we have to have some wahine in the ʻaha kane, keep us going. Keao mele mele, and her voice was so outstanding and pure and perfect that she caused Waulani to rumble and collapse, and forming the valley of Nu'uanu as we know it today. So the other part I like to bring up, and Kalena spoke to that as well, is the word relevance. What is relevant in our world today? And I think that in my experience, and there's been so many good examples of po mai kai, and really good blessings, and being in the right place at the right time. There were a lot of. I graduated from Kamehameha way back in 1980, and so at that time and after that, there were many public occasions where Oli was becoming more and more in vogue, if you will. I know for a time after I worked at the Bishop Museum, I worked at the Hawaii Visitors Bureau, and they used to call and ask for chanters and all that. And even then, I always would ask them, well, why? Why do you think you need a chanter? And well, because when we start the luncheon, it's just so chicken skin and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, wrong already. But from what I knew then, I would kind of bring them into, well, here's what would be relevant or what would be appropriate. And so I found myself having opportunities to participate in those kinds of events that began to, even before the resurgence of the Nakula, Olelo Hawaii, and all that, where the keiki were beginning to Oli as well. So within the hula, within the community, in contemporary times over the last 30 years or so, I think the relevance of the Oli and its role and its restored place in our Hawaiian world. And I agree. I saw the last maybe 45 minutes or hapalua hola of the Papahana Vehena, and all of that was so beautiful. To hear the kekani o kaleo, whether it was ha'i olelo mi kololohua, or whether it was beautiful ho'opa'a by this one over here for Snowbird's Men. I'm not even sure if that answers the question, but I think the relevance today is gaining a foothold. It was always relevant in the Ikawā Kahiko.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Well, we'll just go with this. So, is it Moses Nakuina that has the story of Kel Mele Mele? I'm not sure, but Moses Manu, his version of Kel Mele Mele. It's interesting that when the Kanaka heard Kel Mele Mele chant, they never heard anything like it ever before. and it sounded like the ulili, the shrill of the ulili on the shore. It sounded like the clap of thunder in this sky, but they never heard oli as performed that way. So I guess I might say it was introduced from Kua'aihelani, from the mythical lands to the Kanaka as a form of communication and expression. And for me, the relevance, the function, purpose of oli is it's specific because you have specific tonal techniques and qualities that are established in this oral and aural. The chanter and the listener, communication, and that imparts, I think, what this whole, whoever chose the theme of this panel, Manai Kaleo. So it imparts, so I have like cheat notes too, you know. You know, it imparts what the purpose of the authorship is, what the mele speaks to. And so these tonal techniques can take you as beyond just the kauna and beyond the spoken word, as we say, as in a ha'iolelo. And there is this technique of, and as Manu, and I believe Keo Mele imparted as the Kanaka heard, this reverberation that is consistent within all of us and nature. And it is something that is universal. Now, given that, universal in what way? Universal in the whole world, because we have chanting in Buddhism, we have chanting Maori, we have chanting throughout the world, American Indians chant, and yet we have Kanaka Oiwi chanting. And yet there is this universal reverberation, I think, that is found in music, in architecture, in everything that resounds within our own na'au. And this is why when we hear it, we connect. We connect immediately. When we hear the ha'iolelo, we listen to the words and we can make sense of it. When we listen to the oli and the tonal qualities that are given to the ha'iolelo, we establish not only the mana'o here, the manava here, but some other kind of mana. And I think that's what it is. It's the purpose of the oli is to connect the mana'o, the manava, and the mane kaleo.
Yeah, it's just. Holy, okay, that's better. Okay.
We just have the baton fast. Track and field.
Okay. Okay, I think one of the comments made on the panel by Kumu Kalena was that everyone chanted. However, we see today that a lot of people associate chanting as something that you must be trained to do.
You would have the best technique and knowledge of oli to present that mele or that genealogy, you know, so that, yes, you would need to be trained. Now, if you were in the halimua and you were presenting your pule at the ʻaha, I mean, that is something more personal maybe, and you would not have to be as specific, or, I mean, you'd have to be specific in terms of the pule, but I think there is degrees of, yes, you need to be trained, and yes, you don't have to be trained, because if you know the language and you know how to, you know what they knew and how to relate, establish a relationship of mana. You know, what kind of relationship are you in? Is this a relationship between Akua and you, one-to-one, kanaka to kanaka, ali'i to maka'ainana? What is this relationship? And to the degree that it is, I think it would afford some kind of training. And I think training is important because it, like any fishing, hunting, lauhala, any specific hanaike that we have, you want to excel. The idea is to excel. This is what Kel Melimeli did. She excelled. In order to excel, you need to go through training, and you need to learn from the masters that have the knowledge to train you.
Yeah, I don't have very much to add to that. I think Tony has said it really nicely. I think that there are bodies of knowledge that were commonly known among everybody. I mean, if you're a kid and you're playing around, and kids they just do it, and they teach each other, and so you just learn it that way. And there are no kapu, no restrictions associated with certain bodies of knowledge like that. But then, yeah, and so you have certain kinds of knowledge that is kapu, so that you have certain conditions, times of the year, certain kinds of people in certain circumstances, that are allowed to do these, perform these kinds of mele in those circumstances. So I think that, that is very highly specialized in many cases and requires training.
Yeah, I would say, and we're talking about two things here. We're talking, if you're talking traditional times or contemporary times, and I think that the question was kind of geared towards contemporary times, that people today feel that you almost have to have been trained in order to be allowed to oli and that sort of thing. I would step away for a moment from words like technique and those kinds of things, because we can go and we can analyze the leo, and we have terms, like kauhi and heu and all of these, the little the subtleties of the voice and the changes of sound and inflections. But I think what we need, why we need some training today is not so much in the training of the oli, but it's the training in the leo Hawaii. I think whether it's the ka'olelo ana, ka puana ana, loa ke kahi mau kanaka keia mau la hiki makaukau no I ka olelo Hawaii. Ke kahi ke lohe aku oe ia ano leo, I ku'u mana'o, a'ole kohu like me nā kupuna mamua. I recall, I think we were at Kamehameha at one time years ago, and Kahu Ka'upu, who was the Kahu at Kamehameha, brought in Kahu Kealanahele, who I think was from Hawaii Island, yeah? And, yeah? Kohala. Kahi a ko'u ohana I olai, e olai. And so I remember his pule in particular, because his pule to me sounded like an oli. It sounded like an oli kavele. He was like, au hea oe eke aku e noho me mako
Wow.
So I think this is gonna be good fun, because we can have all kinds of blasts and explosions and everything. Poha poha. But I think so. Anyway, so kumanao it's the how do we regain the leo Hawaii? I think that and part of that is oli. I do believe though, like we're all involved in hula as well. So there in hula, there are prescribed mele hula and mele oli that if you want to say in English, they kind of go a certain way. We do our kunihi a certain way, and everybody kunihis the way we do it in our school, and so on and so forth. So then that becomes, when you go up, when you go down, when you prolong, when you don't, how you breathe. I will say that one comment, and this is something that, although Auntie Pua Kanahele is not an oli, a kumu of mine per se, although we work together on many things, she said one thing to me years ago, or not to me, but to a group of us, and it was what she listens for often in oli is how you handle oftentimes the ending of lines. It's very easy to begin, but how do you end? And she can tell a chanter just from the ke ano o ke la ano ka hopena o ka lalani, and just end like that. She said, the finesse sometimes. Because what it is about I think, see, all of a sudden I have a lot to say. Because I'm very shy. Aaron Salah knows that for a fact, right, Aaron? Very, very hila. But you want, oli oftentimes was to appease, or whether to gain the favor of akua, or the aumakua, or to gain the favor of the ali'i. Because you know if you gain the favor of the akua, your loa'a is going to be really good. If you gain the favor of the ali'i, your loa'a is going to be good. Your life is going to be good because you're going to hang with the rock stars kind of thing. But what you do with your voice to make your voice so beautiful and so stunning, and the knowledge that is imparted in the words that your beautiful voice is because people can have a nice voice and don't have much to say. Anyway.
There was a lot of food for thought there, Manu. I enjoyed it.
That's what I do.
For me, my career is a flight attendant, so I travel around the world, and I've seen now oli being performed around the world. Yes, an attempt at oli, or there some that know how to oli, and yet I don't even want to discuss that yet, but I want to bring it right back here. Even some of the oli I hear now in our own land have influences that I say sound like American Indians, influence that I say sound like Buddhist monks, influence that I say they sound like our cousins from Aotearoa. And I'm thinking like, okay, is this oli kanaka? I'm not saying they cannot do that, but what I'm saying is, are you borrowing chant motifs, chant soundings from these other indigenous groups and now incorporating them into our style of oli? Is it because that is a way of transforming or the oli growing? Is that a way because you do not know the techniques, and I go back to techniques, of how to chant oli kanaka? You just don't know it. You don't know the difference between nahe nahe, nonolo, he'u, ha'i, on and on and on. You just don't know it, so you hear the sounds, which I think, again, is universal. It's universal sounds that we hear. And so it's like, hey, yeah, I go, hey, 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 hey. Okay, ʻAha, ʻAha. Now, I'm going to hear that, and I'm going to immediately say, hey, to you too. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I don't know if it's important that we do stick to learning what is true oli. What are the techniques that produce the sounds that accompany our mele, which is the most important part, as Manu points out, is the leo. But once we start to just throw in, it's like hula or any other Hawaiian practice that, you know, it can make it better, can make it faster, can make it more easy, can make it more likable. But is it kanaka oiwi? I don't know.
Yeah. And you know, actually, our kupuna did it. You know, in the 1840s, 1850s, the hula olapa started. And, you know, we had hula Laʻapapa and the pahu and all of those old styles that have a different form of composition, the mele do, and that have, you know, certain kinds of vocal techniques and styles. But then, you know, missionaries came, and they were the first group, really foreign group, to establish a significant population in Hawaii. Because, you know, since 1778, we had, you know, traders, I guess whalers came, and some traders came, and other explorers, Vancouver mob. But, you know, they didn't stay, really, and there weren't very many, there wasn't a large foreign population until the missionaries came. And then they started to teach Hawaiians to sing. And that's how we started the Himeni Haipule, you know, our own Hawaiian hymns. And so, you know, the Hawaiians heard that, and they were influenced by that. And then their response was the hula olapa. That's one of the responses to the Himeni Haipule that they introduced, missionaries introduced. So we see there already differences. So that, you know, we have, for example, you know, you have 4 beats per line. You usually have 2 lines per verse. The melody of the verses is set. And you don't find that, you know, in the hula Laʻapapa and these hula pahu. You know, some of we call them oki and not pauku. You know, the oki in the old days, they were verses. They could be 9 lines, they could be 20 lines, they could be 30 lines, and then you have another oki, and that's 40 lines. And you know, pauka manao, pauka mele, ke oki malila. When the thought ends, then that's when the oki, the verse ends. That's the old way. But with this new himeni haipule that came in, and then the resulting response from Hawaiians, which was this hula olapa, then it changed. And so, I think we are constantly affected by our surroundings. The old days, what did they hear? They didn't hear sounds like, my hand on a table like this. They certainly didn't hear amplified voices like we hear today. They didn't hear trucks, trains, boats. They heard birds. They heard the surf. They heard wind sounds. And so all of these sounds they incorporated into their chanting and were affected by them. And of course, sounds that humans make one to another. So, then the missionaries came, they introduced this new way of singing, and then, subsequent to that, we had other musical styles, not just from America, but from other parts of the Pacific. So we're constantly influenced by these things, and I think that, it's not surprising to see that these things enter into our chanting. If it sounds like, some of our Hawaiian people are chanting like Maoris, I think maybe it's not so surprising because, we have this affinity with them and their culture and their language and what they're trying to do in Aotearoa to revitalize their language and their culture, what we're trying to do. So there's that pili, that pilina, and I think that that'll affect us, in ways that maybe we're not even conscious of. But I think Tony brings up a really good thing, and so does Manu, because they both hit on this, I think, and it's very important. I think it's important to know what we sound like. What is our Hawaiian sound? What is that? And I'm so grateful that we have words like he'u and ha'i and nonolo and kauhi ha'ano'u. All of these terms have very specific meanings, and they help us to keep on course. That's our toolbox. I think Kalani said it once, Kalani Akana in another panel setting. He says we have a toolbox that if we go to, we can make use of it. Not, in a very sort of, mechanical way, but, make good artistic use of it so that when we chant, we really are using a Hawaiian sound. Now, it may be appropriate in other situations to incorporate maybe a more Maori sound or Buddhist chanting. I'm not sure what those would be, but, there might be.
Yeah, and just to add a little bit to that, it's like when I teach Oli, and especially to foreigners, I mean, there's only three things I teach them, is you need to spend time alone, and that is only by yourself, not with another person. You need to be amongst nature, so if they're, wherever they live, they need to do that, and they need to chant out loud. I mean, this is an art that requires oral, verbal, an oral skill. So the winds of Bordeaux, France, may be different from Kahalu'u, and yet, if they imitate that, that's fine. To me, imitating the sounds of nature like our kupuna did is maikai, and learning, having the tools of the tools in the toolbox will lend them to learn Hawaiian chanting.
I just want to add one thing that that I try to, my students are none of them are here at the ʻAha Kane because they're wahine, So, but and it's difficult for the Kane to teach the Leo Kane and the Leo Wahine because it's not just a pitch kind of thing or differentiation, but it's a little, you hear groups of men and women together. Either the men are chanting high and the women are chanting low, or the women are chanting high and the men are chanting low, or that kind of thing, in order to get it into like a unison thing. But one thing I do emphasize to my students is one Leo or one Kanaka can make many, many different sounds. And we should not define or we don't necessarily need to have to define ourself with one voice. In other words, I can chant something very low and sound very different, that kind of thing. It's a specific sound. Maybe it sounds like me. But the same thing, it's the same person, but maybe at different times when it's a different kind of function or need or what you're trying to express, or whether it be extemporaneous also in a ho ue ue a kanikau ue helu. You're not going to rehearse that. Okay, how's it going now? How do I do my we helu? You can't do that because it's emotion. So emotion guides the voice of the kanaka. When we are mad, sometimes our voice, the pitch goes up. When we're scolding our keiki, gun, fun it, and every name of the book, Charles, Albert, Manu, Aiko, Hana, Boyd, gun, fun it, get over here, you know. And then there's a, baby, Shaki Alapaki, how are you? So, but it's all, and so the emotion and what's going on the inside is going to affect how your voice comes out on the outside. And that has to do with, I think, any culture, because our vocal expression can be an expression of emotions and thoughts within that are basically coming out and impacting someone, something, or some others.
Oh, hello. Okay, mahalo. Okay, so going along that lines, I wanted to ask about the process that you go through as chanters, and specifically about whenever you discover a chant that is new to you, say in the new pepa or in some kind of collection, what is the process that you go through to determine how that chant should be chanted?
If I know the composer, I might go to the composer and discuss what the melody is. If I knew the composer and I knew what the thoughts of the composer that they wanted to get across, then maybe I would go to that composer and discuss that, what you're asking about. If I was to have created the mele myself, then I would maybe have a more intimate idea of how I would want to express that and have that emotion, that mana be transmitted orally. If I got it from a source of historical source, which is always the trickiest, I think, and the most challenging. Well, I won't say challenging. Sometimes when you get it from the composer, it's the most challenging, especially if the composer is alive, because it's very personal. It's a very personal thing sometimes, the mele. And to extract that kind of feeling and feel how that person actually feels about what they're writing is a difficult thing. And so maybe historically, given that I'm not proficient in the language or the everything about it, it's a path of, it's a journey of discovery. And that's the exciting thing about it, is discovering the elements that go along with what the mele is intended for. And once you kind of get that idea, then you may start to realize I'd like to perform it or do it in this specific style. I've had several students, but I'll just pick one of my students here is Kekuewa. So we did Hei Noa no Alakaihu Kupakei as a chant that he performed last year. 176 lines. Now, he didn't know he was going to do that. None of us knew, but it started out with 16 lines that I had performed for a kupuna, which is specific to her Aina Kupa, which was Ka'u. And I said, I think maybe this would be appropriate for you to do this. However, I'm positive that there are more than these 16 lines. And Tutupukui had stated in the 16 lines that the people of Ka'u do not give their genealogy. But here it is. Here, I'll give you these 16 lines. Okay, so I learned the 16 lines. I have performed it elsewhere, and I performed it again. And I said, you know, Kekuewa, it had some kind of essence feeling for me, and I wanted him to feel that. Well, he went out and found the 176 lines that went along with it. The idea of how do you perform that and how you now look at that and say, how am I going to express the same feelings that I could have done in 16 lines in a certain way, now to 176 lines. That may take longer or shorter or whatever. I mean, these are all determinants of how you're going to perform it. But just a side note is that in those 16 lines, every line was probably an oki of the 116 lines. So when Tutupukui said, we do not give our genealogy, she actually gave the whole 176 lines in this one oki of 16 lines. And in the discovery, in the journey, then you discover yourself, you discover what the composer's intentions are, you discover so many things. Just one little word can mean a whole history of the genealogy. And by then, you may start to say, oh, this is how I want to perform the oli.
Yeah, that's a great question, by the way. So how do you interpret the written word, and how do you basically? It's like doing a musical arrangement of a mele. It's an arrangement. It's where again where the voice goes up, where the voice goes down. I think, of course, if you have the good fortune of knowing the haku mele, that's helpful. But I think you have to also, because of course, if these are old mele, then you're not. You might be related to the haku mele, but you're not necessarily going to know them. And so it goes back then to what is the function? What is that mele there for? Hawaiians didn't keep books of poetry to go read through after dinner as a source of enjoyment, but they had vaihona of mele that they could draw upon from memory that had specific functions. Mele that were deep love expressions, and that whether it be ho'ipo'ipo or just i'ini kind of things. You can that already brings a sort of a feeling to the emotion and the leo that might suggest how that would go. There are certain words and many words and many place names that are very specific that can describe sounds and emotions in and of themselves. The words are saying what the feelings are, and sometimes you can go with that flow. If it is something that is obviously it's an olelo nuku, it's just like scolding somebody, then you know it's probably not going to be the same way you would interpret a mele, kauna, mele, ho'ipo'ipo, and that kind of thing. So our language, it does allow, we can make everything sound very beautiful and very loving all the time, and the reason for that is our language, and like most other Polynesian languages, but unlike most other languages in the world where every word ends with a vowel or is a vowel. So there is no, we create those little consonant sounding endings, but for the most part, our like the kekahe mai akavai, kaholo akavai. Every now and then the water, it will hit a rock and splash and then move around. But our language in and of itself allows for this fluidity that we can apply to everything. But we can also then, when it's time to become the thunder, we can make our voice be the thunder. When it's time to become the crackling of the fire, we can make our voice do that also. When it comes to imitate, and this is what I always, when I teach, because I'm no expert, but apparently I know a little more than most people down the block where I live. You know what I mean? So even things like ho'aiai, I'm not an expert, but I have a way of thinking about it as it's imitating the ohe hanoihu, and so you become the bird, you become and all these things. So in looking at the text itself, if I'm looking at an old text, what was the conversation? What might the circumstance have been? What was the emotion at that time? And then you have certain texts or certain prayers that are prescribed, that we do all the time. And even in prayers of whatever faith you may be, there are prescribed words that are done a little differently from time to time as well. You look at the Lord's Prayer in Hawaiian, Pule Akahaku, and we have that beautiful kind of almost a chant-like arrangement. So that has ties in the. Don't mean to be disrespectful by not finishing a line. I'm so sorry. And then there's other ways to do that same pule as well, and there are other arrangements of it. So the leo oli, as it relates to text, is almost like a musical arrangement, and it has to do with your own experience, your own knowledge, your own interpretation, and your own emotion.
Just one really short thing. I would agree with all of that. And I think it is up to the individual. And what's so nice about the old styles of chanting And recent research has helped us to discover, I think with more clarity, what these styles are. Because there's the Kuluwai Maka collection in the Bishop Museum, and I think, what was it now, Theodore Kelsey, the oral historian, and the anthropologist, Kenneth Emery, they went to Kuluwai Maka and recorded him. And he helped, they went line by line. And so he interpreted for them some 150 or so, I think, chants he remembered at that time. And one really interesting thing, if you go back and look at the collection, is that he includes what he says are the styles that are used for these different chants. And so, recent research has shown that you can kind of group them into categories. So he had Leo Olioli Kaholo. He had Leo Olioli Kanainai. He had Leo, there was another Olioli Ii, I think that was the third one. And then there was Ho'aiai, and then you had other styles that and so, research like that can be very helpful to us chanters, so that, we rely certainly on our own capacity to create, but then we also, go back and sort of see what the old folks did and how they did it, what was important to them.
It's interesting that and you're right, and earlier I made a comment about maybe not being so focused on those techniques, but I stand corrected. That is correct. But the interesting thing is the words that represent those styles also have specific meanings and uses outside of the Oli world in just the language itself. So kanainai is something that, I mean, you would speak of those plea, a plea or a prayer or that kind of thing, and he'u and the ha'i and all those things that not necessarily always apply in that Oli technique sense, but what they represent in that style is kind of what they mean in the language used in a regular context of verbiage and text itself. So kanainai, kaholo, leo kaholo, oli kaholo, and that kind of thing.
Okay. I know we wanted to try and get out of here on time, which is 5:30. Yeah? So I wanted to give time for the audience, but I have one last question before I turn it over to our audience here. Talking about the future, and today we know that halau hula especially have become conduits or venues for the study of Oli. But as chanters, we know that Oli exists outside of that, and halau hula is only one entity where Oli can be learned. So my question is, where do you see the future of Oli going? Where, what is the role of Oli in today's society and beyond? I know, sorry, a big question at the end.
If you're wrapping it up so early, we still get plenty of time. I don't know, but my Wanu watch says it's only 5 to 10 to. But my answer is that this is a good example of where the future is right now. I mean, to have a room of 20 plus Hawaiian men right here, some with cameras and some without, and one kaiko mahine over there, the hi'ipepe, the punahele right there. That says it a lot about it right there, is that there's enough interest that we even have the pepeyao, and we know that the pepeyao o kalehulehu e ho'oloheana ma'oke ia ki vikio ana. I think that's good. I don't think I can teach everybody, and I don't think I know a lot, but I know enough that I know that those I'll have a chance to impact, and maybe by example, then that will help to carry us in and kind of leading by example, which is maybe a good way, because we're kind of out there, po'e hula, and then again, as I mentioned, the different hanana and the different, whether they be ceremonies or canoe races. I got the call again to go open up the McFarland race, and that means Oli at 8 o'clock, Bloody Mary at 8:15. You know how that goes at Duke's. And anyway. But that again, that speaks to the relevance. It's relevant. We get up and I chant Ia Va'anui that I learned from Ka'upena, and I chanted 3 times through the short text with one breath, the way I learned it, and people hear that, and then all of a sudden, the table opens up. It wasn't even, it was full, and then opens up, and the kai came just right for the right surf. And I said, maybe I learned that chant the right way, because everything is working out just perfectly over here. I think, on the other hand, what I do see a lot of people doing is just rehashing what other people did. And that's not a way to learn. So I think if we can not be maybe necessarily so Oli specific, but in all of the loina that are a part of our world, don't just, you have to dig a little deeper. You know, again, the term that we use, anti-pua, them, and of course in their family, the ohana, pele, aihonu amea, eli kaumai. But I believe in that phrase as well too, because I believe that you dig a little deeper, and then more will present itself in front of you. If you don't go deep, you're not going to get much in front of you. And people will borrow this, borrow that, borrow this, and mix them all up in hula, in oli. I think that in Laʻakapu's example of sounding Indian, sounding Buddhist or whatever, is because people don't really know. And part of the problem in our Hawaiian world that we're trying to claim, and this is where I really appreciate what I see in certain halau hula and in the lua, in the lua practices and other cultural practices, are the restrictions. The restrictions or the restricted behavior or the prescribed behavior, which is also known as kapu in our world, are the things that can keep people on course and not allow anybody to do whatever they want to do anytime they want to do it. So part of our Hawaii world today is getting back to those. And when I say people, you say kapu, people get all ha'alulu. But we have kapu right now, the kapu of the green light. Or the kapu of the red light. There's a kapu right today in Kaneohe town. I cannot go through that red light. It's kapu. You know, so why are we so afraid of our own word kapu? It's a law. It's a rule. It's a way of. It's a code of operation. Love all that kapu-rated stuff I see on the forums to sign up. So as long as we have a little bit of discipline in all that we do, and not create the mindset that call it what you like. I'll do it what I want to do. My kupuna told me in a dream. It's like, well, really? You know, but you hahai a specific alanui, and you tell me who your teacher's teacher was. Where you learned that from, who's your teacher and who's your teacher's teacher, then I can believe that. Otherwise, we get this acculturated, not even acculturated, it's a homogenized mishmash of all kinds of things, and oli is only one of them. The people who paddle canoe, there's all different kinds of different ways of, of turning the torso and extending and all that, but you can tell what came from where. You know what I mean? And there's a reason why things are done a certain way. When you start mixing it up, is that you become the T-shirt that everybody used to wear back in the 1980s, of a big man with big muscles, and he has a lono priest's helmet on, and a kupe'e boar tusk on one hand, and a malo with half a pa'u over here, and a kakau over there, and a uli and a spear in either hand. It's like, what is that? It's just what's wonderful about it is there's a great deal of interest in all these many things, but let's not mix everything up so we forget what the real thing looked like. That's when we have to figure out, what do we sound like? What does the Hawaiian sound like? How did Kahu Keala Nahele pule?
Oh, okay. Again, if we're going to continue to do Oli as a practice, then we have to be aware of what is the function of Oli and how do we become in tune with that function. Otherwise, we lose it. Otherwise, it's just not necessary. But to see a room full of 20 men here interested in Oli is wonderful. I wish that it was 200 men in this room at this time. And yet, when I thought about it again, it's that no, Oli is really not meant for everyone, because it is a lifestyle. I look at it as a lifestyle. It's not something, it's a lifestyle as the Lavaia is a lifestyle, as another practicing art is a lifestyle. It's you become everything involved in it. It's a lonely art because you're alone. You're by yourself. You do not have that pahu, you do not have that ho'opa'a, you do not have that olapatukaha for you, you do not have the embellishments of movement. You are the vessel. You are the sole vessel, and you carry all of the thoughts, emotions, and mana that go along with the oli in the specific function and mele, which is the most important thing, is the authorship, is that mele, and how you're going to impart that mana. But at the same time, here we are at ʻAha Kane and at many things throughout the world, where not only has halau hula become such a multinational phenomena, where people around the world are performing hula and they do not know how to perform mele hula and mele pule for hula because they just don't know. So they start incorporating all kinds of oli into halau hula and their hula. But this is true also of protocol all around the world, and even here in Hawaii. Our protocols are getting mixed up. We are using chants and oli styles that are being incorporated any which way we want. And you know, this, an ʻaha, to have an ʻaha requires so much protocol and so much the need that everybody needs to know, what, am I doing this correctly? Is it pono? I mean, because not pono to the sense where somebody will come back and say, hey, you know what, Ra, that was terrible. No, because we're all learning. It's all about being on the journey of learning. But at the same time, protocol is important for Kanaka. And we need to know how to perform the oli that is specific to protocol. And that's true of halau hula, which has so much protocol, you know. And if you were to be, at one time, if we had hula kuahu, can you imagine? Or if we had the kapu system or anything like that, can you imagine if you were to step out of bounds? Not only would you be affecting yourself, you'd be affecting your community. And this is the idea. How are we going to affect our community through oli? And, you know, if oli, I don't know, haiolelo is important. It's so important. Does oli have its place? Do we need it anymore? I'm not sure. I say yes. I say really yes, that the oli, again, for me, in the oral communication of imparting mana of the leo is the most important part. Yes, the haiolelo is the foundation, it is the core of the understanding of the manao and the manava, but to impart that mana to the next person or thing is the technique of oli. And for me, I would like to see the future of oli go in that direction where we, how do we do it? We live the oli, but we first need to respect it. And by respecting it, we need to learn about it and not just take upon ourselves to say, I am Hawaii and I can do this and I'm going to do it no matter what. Hey, go for it. Do your thing. But try to realize how you're affecting your community. You know, this is a community thing. Every little thing we do is going to have the next effect on not only the future of how we go forward as Kanaka Iwi, but how we affect the world, because the world wants to do everything we do too. They see the power that we have in the voice, whether it is speaking, chanting, all of that. There is a power that we have here in Hawaii, and we need to maintain a respect for that so that we can continue it.
Again, I don't have very much to add because you both said it so beautifully. I think it's just, yeah. You know, when I was studying, maybe just something really brief, when I started to study hula in the, what was it, the late 60s, early 70s, when I was in high school, really you only heard chanting in what were called basically hula studios at the time. Maiki Ayu did have a halau hula. I think she was one of the few that had, you know, a school that she called the halau hula. So that's what you would expect in those days to hear chanting. But now we hear it, as Manu was saying, we hear it in these pālua. We hear it in the schools, immersion schools. We hear it in so many more different kinds of context today, which is, I think, is really, really good. So it's showing that it's growing. But I think that, and I'm really excited about that. And yet I think it's good to remember respect. I think Tony really said something really good, because if we respect that our ancestors created this beautiful art form, we will try, and this is my own personal opinion, but I'm hoping that other people view it only the same way, that we will try to keep it in a way that's recognizably Hawaiian. And so we have these forms of it that we can definitely say are Hawaiian. Although, you know, even having said that, I know I don't sound like Kuluwai Maka. I mean, he's one of my favorite chanters. Another is Puaha'aheo. This woman chanter from Moanalua, Namakahelu Maka'ena. Oh, I just love her voice. Her ho'aiai, just, gets you right in the heart. You know, but I know I cannot sound like them. I can try and try and try. So I think a part of the respect that we have for the tradition is trying as hard as we can. Even though perhaps knowing that it might be unattainable. It might be unattainable, but it might be attainable. And I consider my Hawaiian language use same way, you know, because I wasn't raised speaking Hawaiian. The old people around, you know, they spoke Hawaiian to each other, but they didn't speak to us. And so, but I kind of had the sound in my ear. And so, you kind of pick it up, you know, I went to Kamehameha. And so we learn, but the Hawaiian gets better as you use it. And then, you know, if you have respect for these old people who use the language a certain way, a respect for these old people who chanted a certain way, then you try your best to imitate them so that you carry forward what they knew.
Yeah, I think so many things come back right down to your values. What do you really value? And what you're teaching, whether you are involved in chant or what have you, do you value the generational overlap, which is how I describe heritage? You know, if it's all about me, I, right now it's all about me, and I feel Hawaiian. My nephew told me this not long ago. I'm listening to my sister having trouble with one of her kids, and he's all about, I told him, hey, you better go out. It was Mother's Day just recently, and I said, you go out. He's an adult now. He's 28 years old. And, no, I'm Hawaiian. I don't need bathe and all this kind of stuff. I was like, I pulled his ear so fast. And I said, you know what? See, we have forgotten really who our Hawaiian people are. Clean people. We look good. We smell good. You know, we like that. It's a good thing. And I quickly turned him around because he learned this from other friends that the more dirt under his nails and the more Hauna he was, the more Hawaiian he felt. I said, ʻAʻole pela. That's not a value that's a value that has been made up because there's no depth. Tell me whose great-grandfather told them that. Nobody. We don't come from there. If you work in the lo'ikalo or you work in the lua ko'i or wherever where you're going to get all kinds of grime all over you, then of course you're going to au mahope. I think that we're so fortunate with all that has come our way as a lahui, and we have been able to withstand, like the a'ali'iku makani, if you will, the strongest of winds that have nearly ripped the roots out. But as Mrs. Bacon always reminds us of the people in Ka'u, when the big winds come, you hold on to that a'ali'i and you believe in it, and its roots will keep you in place. And when the storm is over, you have that swaying beauty that reminds you of where you come from and who you come from. So I'm very gladdened that we're having this conversation. I think that whether it's 200 people in the room or 20 or even 2, I think we are fortunate that there is mana in the Leo Hawaii. That is what I think catches the ear. Forget all the business and all the things that all that kind of stuff that goes around in the world with regard to our Hawaiian music and our hula. But there is something very healing, I believe, about the sound of our voice and the mana of the words that are carried. I think the ha'i olelo that we are almost putting side by side to the oli, it is sort of an oli as well. Because when you speak, when you pray like Keala Nahele, you are in that kaholo or in that kavele kind of format, and that becomes oli. So oli is not all this, what we immediately hear as chant, but a style of speaking. It can be oli as well. And the ho'onalo nalo. Sometimes we don't want people to know what we're talking about. So we really garble it up. And other times it's all about the precise enunciation of each word that we chant. So I mean, all of that. So wherever you're at in that right now, I think that we are in a good place, that the interest is there. But remember the generations before you and go back. We're very fortunate today that we still have some kupuna like Ka'upena Wong. God bless him. Really, and Mrs. Bacon, who can tell you the stories, and the recordings as well. But the kupuna ola keia maula, they have a lot to remind us and listen to them. When I hear the elders who are judging competitions and they get bashed by the community and the newspaper, oh, they're so blind, they don't know what the hell they're seeing, and how disrespectful. You think just because somebody cannot see too clearly that they can't see you for everything that you are, they cannot hear, and they don't remember what they remember when they were children, and they're now in their 80s and 90s. How fortunate we have to still have overlap in our world. Because without that overlap, it's just going to be just me, I, and no enough, kena, no enough.
No, a little twist on this, on the topic of where Oli is going. I hear Oli in a lot of song, in musical recordings nowadays. Yeah, Oli has become part of and bless his heart, Brother Kaleka, took that to a new level of expression, of having Oli with Hapa and that kind of songs. Most recently, I was approached to present Oli in movies. And I was like, oh, wow, this is like kind of weird. But I hope we can see one segment of a movie. It's just a segment of the whole movie that I worked on with a local producer, Nathan Kurosawa. He's a flight attendant in Hawaii, but he also produced some movies, feature length, called, his first one was called The Ride. It was The Life and Times of Duke Hanamoku, but in a feature film sense. But it was so funny that when I was recording the Oli for that particular scene, the producer asked, oh, I have another producer that would like to use Oli in his film, which was a feature film Hollywood movie. The movie is probably never going to be released. It's called Truth or Dare, and it's about teenagers on Oahu that go through spooky stuff, like at Morgan's Corner. It's set at Halloween, but it's not as gory as like a Halloween. So I was like, what do you mean? You want me to make like spooky sounds? Is that what you think Oli is? You want me to go, and use that? And he wasn't sure, but the producer was this guy, Tom Boyle, Punahou graduate, born and raised here, and he's producing movies. He said, no, I want to express to the world that in Hawaii we have these types of stories, about spooky stuff. And yet he had to do it in a Hollywood kind of feature thing. And so I chanted a few things that were not like real specific to any kind of pule or anything. But the one thing that I made sure that they had to do, as in both movies, was they couldn't chop it up. They couldn't use sound bits. That if you're going to use the Oli, you have to use the whole thing from beginning to end. Now, whether you made it loud or soft, that was up to you. But if at any time you were to just use the first line and that was it, then you couldn't use it at all. Because to me, the importance was that I'm not giving you an Oli, I'm giving you a mele, I'm giving you someone's authorship, what their thoughts and emotions are. So you cannot just chop this up and use it as sound bites on your film. And so that was a requirement, and both of them held to that.
Hi, mahalo nui.
What's done?